Okay. So hi everyone, welcome. We're having a chat today with Sallyanne Brady from the Irish Menopause. So welcome, Sallyanne.
Thank you, Sinead. Good to be here.
So I just thought it'd be a really good opportunity to chat with Sallyanne and just find out. Sallyanne is one of the co-founders behind the Irish Menopause, for anybody who already knows it as a fantastic resource. And I suppose what we kind of wanted to have a chat about today was, what I suppose the space of Irish menopause and the importance in it, because I certainly know from myself the issues that I faced years ago that have been ongoing for years and being turned away by GPs and consultants. Even though I knew that the hormones were my issue, it wasn't until I came across the Irish Menopause that I found people who were the exact same as me, and I found the advice that I need. So to me, the Irish Menopause and Sallyanne and Claire are lifesavers. Amongst other things like HRT and my menopause specialist, Brenda Moran. So yeah, if we could just have a chat, Sallyanne, just about, I suppose, your background and how the Irish Menopause got set up in the first place.
Sure, yeah. Well, Sinead, my background is nothing to do with menopause. I actually worked in the facility industry for most of my life, fairly boring. And when I got to 30s, and I guess from about 35 onwards, I started going a bit anxious, and it got extreme and escalated and escalated. So from, I suppose, 35 right up to 40, it was an uphill battle. And my perimenopause was really, really difficult. And I suppose from about 37, I started banging on doctors' doors saying something wrong here, And nobody ever mentioned menopause. And I started to think myself, could it be menopause? Because I started seeing some patterns and stuff, but I was always told I was too young. And I was told, oh, we do bloods. Oh, no, your bloods are fine. So it was a long and horrific journey, to be very honest, Sinead. By the time I was 40, so it was, 4 or 5 years of my life lost to this. It was horrific now. I was given HRT. A doctor finally listened to me and said, okay, let's try this. And if it solves your problems, then that was the problem, because we know we can't use bloods. And it did solve my problems. So then I started realizing, wow, I could not be here, because I was suicidal at one point, and I'm a mother, and the devastation that was caused, and it was so easily fixed. And I got really annoyed by that. And I said, this isn't right. How many other women are out there like this? Because I can't be unlucky enough to be the only person in the whole of Ireland that has experienced this. And I had met Claire actually through another Facebook group previous to that online. And I remember seeing some comments she made and thought she seemed like a very sensible woman. And I messaged her once to ask her something. And anyway, we started chatting, and we became sort of online friends, if you want to call it that. And we decided we'd set up the Irish Menopause. It was spring of 2019. And our attitude was, look, if we help one person, if just one, we're happy. So that's why we set it up. And we wanted to provide, there was this big gap out there where there was no proper information. There was loads of information all over the place, but it was all conflicting. And you'd read one thing and say, yeah, that makes sense. Read another thing, yeah. So what I started doing was saying, hang on a second now, forget all these opinions. Where's the science? Show me the science. Where's the evidence? And I started realizing, if you follow evidence-based, generally speaking, not always, you can't go too far wrong. So we set up the Irish Menopause, which is evidence-based information on menopause for women. So that's sort of the background to it. Obviously, there's a lot of areas where there isn't evidence for stuff, and simply because it hasn't been studied. Not because it's not right, because they haven't looked into it. So, you know that coming from your space as well, that there's a lot of stuff that there isn't evidence for, but it works, which is really, really interesting. So we created the community, it grew steadily, and here we are today now, 44,000 members.
That's amazing. Fantastic, Sallyanne. And to Claire Peel is the other co-founder of the Irish Menopause. So that's a fantastic achievement. And I think what you've brought to the space of, social platforms, I think has been so valuable to people. So where do people find you? What platforms are you on, and how do they get in contact with you?
Sure. On Facebook, we have a private group. Okay, so only members can see what's going on in there. How private can it be with 44,000? I respect that. So that's the Irish Menopause Facebook support group. We do have a public page. There's not as much going on that. Instagram, we're also on Instagram, and we also have a Twitter account. So we're on really all the social media platforms. But really, if you're looking for information and support, and you're looking for your tribe, as you found, Sinead, it's the group, the support group you need to join. the Irish Menopause.
Yeah, and it really is, because I mean, you have a huge amount of resources even available on that page, haven't you, where people can go so they can like search whatever topic it is they're looking at to find that information. So what kind of information is up there for people?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously you've got anyone can ask anything and people will offer their opinions, and this is my story and this is what happened to me. We have a file section in the group and we've got lots and lots of different documents with evidence base and facts about HRT, about menopause, not all about HRT, just anything to do with menopause and perimenopause. There's even a great document in there for your partner, you know, that you can print off and show to them, which is fantastic. We have a featured section. It used to be called announcements, and that's all the videos, and we'll be in there with this one as well. So it's really packed to the hilt with information. If you learn how to utilize it, you get the best out of the group. And I think, Sinead, you came into our lives as a member probably some time ago. You learned how to use the group and probably got all the information you needed. Yeah.
I did, yeah. And I suppose that's one other thing that I kind of wanted to mention was as well that you do one-to-one consultations as well, Sallyanne. So I mean,
I do, yeah. And just I'm not medical, I'm signposter. But what it is potentially, well, it is time saving and potentially money saving as well, because I only said this morning, I'm dealing with a lot of women that by the time they come to me, they've spent a fortune on all different specialists. You know, trying to get sorted, when it's very simple, really. And it's about signposting, giving people the correct information, where they need to go, what they want to do, and to be heard as well, and to trash it out and talk it out is really important. So that's what I do, as well as menopause education. Yeah.
Yeah. And I suppose, so, and again, so I would have done a consultation with you very back, like we're back in the very early stages. Is when I thankfully found the Irish Menopause. And I was never more thankful when I found it. And I was really at a dead end, I suppose, like you say, because I just was being ignored and nobody was listening to me, even though I knew what the issue was, even though this very similar thing had happened, the very same thing really had happened to me after our firstborn. And everyone was, it was hormone related and that was it. But when it came to the perimenopause, then it was, oh no, it's nothing to do with your hormones. It's nothing at all to do with that, you know. So the opposite advice was being given or being, you know, handed out. And obviously, and I found yourselves and I did the consultation with you, and that's what allowed me. I had a fairly long wait to see a menopause specialist, but at that stage, I didn't really care because I knew I am right and I have found the right avenue. So what is it that you find people come to the Irish Menopause? What kind of issues are you seeing that people are having?
Every journey is different, but at the same time, we're kind of all the same. So you've got women with the mental health side of it, depression, anxiety, just not feeling like themselves, exhausted, tired is huge, aches and pains all over, gut issues, which you know well, Sinead. The list goes on. But the overall thing that people will say is, I think I'm going mad, or I just don't feel like myself, or I think I'm falling apart. It seems to be one thing or another. You know, this month it's the problem with my ears, next month it's the problem with my shoulders, next month it's just really sad that nobody is joining the dots and realizing it's menopause. Like a really interesting one that it's like a golden thread running through it all is plantar fasciitis. It's everywhere, and it's a menopause thing, you know. It's fascinating. And these are the things that we all talk about, night sweats and hot flushes, and some women don't get them. So there's a lot of women out there who might have anxiety, might have plantar fasciitis problems with their feet, they might be a bit stiff and achy, and they're just not attributing that to hormones at all. And why would you, I suppose, if we're not educated on this?
No, yeah, we wouldn't. Of course we wouldn't, because if we don't know about something, and unless we find that right space or group or person or therapist or whatever it is, whatever profession it is, we're not going to understand these things.
Exactly.
Yeah, like it's certainly in my practice, I certainly would have found, I find the very same thing, especially with you know, the side of anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts. I mean, I see a huge amount of women coming through, and again, they're not being listened to, or they're being put on medication that's not appropriate for them. And again, you know, I suppose they're not being, I suppose, listened to when they're asking for the HRT, even when they know, or even just they want to speak about it. It's not that they even might look for it. They want to talk about the possibilities. And I find that huge. And I think that's what's very frightening, is the mental health side of it. Because what is going on out there in the mental health world that's actually down to hormones, you know?
Yeah, for a lot of us, yeah, it's pretty scary. And so many women not being heard, like you say. And this is the system, it's not anybody's fault. And menopause isn't taught, as we know, in the medical system. So some doctors, in fairness, are amazing and they really are doing the best to help. They don't know. And then there's some amazing that do know. So I don't think it's fair. There's no fluency and consistency in this. And it fascinates me that so many medics can have so many different opinions, and menopause is treated differently in all different countries. And we're kind of, we're all female. We're all going to experience the same. So what's with all this diversity in menopause treatment? It's a bit crazy. It's not right. And that from you found your menopause specialist and you were heard. And I'm sure the difference with that appointment and previous appointments was like night and day.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a massive difference. And as I say, like that's one of my lifesavers to me, it is, it is quite frightening. I was only talking to that about somebody yesterday about training. And I know I was at a conference at the weekend. It was lymphedema and the ongoing chronic situation. There were chronic edema. But one of the speakers had said that she had phoned around universities in Ireland to find out how much training doctors got and how much training nurses and OTs and physios. So in their 7 years of training, doctors got anything between 60 to 80 minutes of training on the lymphatic system. And
Wow.
nurses, OTs, physios, 30 minutes. It was 30 to 40 minutes, I think she said, for them in your whole 3-4 years of training. So if that's the lymphatic system, that's why you see they're not getting the training in menopause. So of course they don't understand it, but I think they also need to be a bit more open to wanting to engage with people and learn that, or certainly referring them to people they know. Like, no doctor ever told me about any menopause specialists. It was on the Irish Menopause that I found out about the menopause specialists in the country.
And did you really struggle? This is interesting. Did you really struggle, Sinead? And obviously, in your space, you know all your stuff, okay? You know your nutrition. But this makes a really valid point that nutrition is not going to sort missing hormones, no matter what you do.
No, you can't balance something your body's no longer producing.
Thank you.
And like that, my journey would have been, at that stage, I had done every single possible thing I could do, whether it was Western medicine or it was the natural route, and nothing was working. And this was my whole point, was it is hormone driven, because mine initially would have been cyclical, which is a huge indicator. And then obviously progressed and just was constant. And yeah, I think it's quite a scary space to be in, that that people aren't listening and that people feel that how much it's affecting them, obviously at home, in their work life, in everything. I mean, think about the research out there about how people are women quitting early or retiring early because of the issues they have.
That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, menopause affects everybody, and perimenopause, and it has the potential to make you or break you, and it can destroy marriages and careers. And I mean, thankfully, you did have the sense and you reached out. And how are you feeling now?
Yeah, so I'm fantastic. And I still have, because I'm perimenopause and I'm PMS, so I'm still cycling in the background. So the fluctuations can cause issues, but I'm the best I have been in about 9 years now.
Isn't that incredible?
It's fantastic, and I think it's amazing. And that's, as I said, why I would credit the Irish Menopause, because had I not, God only knows where I'd be today had I not kind of found that route, because...
Well, thank God you did.
Yeah. When people are at that stage where nobody's listening, it's very, very difficult for them.
And look at the amount you can help now as well. Like, it's not, the Irish Menopause aren't so much like in a bubble. This is, grassroots, the ripple effect. And you have this, you've learned, a lot from us and from your own job, and now you're helping many, and then those women will help many. And this is the way this needs to go, to get to a point where all women know about this, and our daughters and those coming up behind us.
It's huge. And that's one of the other things that I was going to ask you about. So you have not only have you opened that space for people, safe space for people to talk and to, discover and educate themselves, but you've been involved in a lot of the menopause movements, which have come about, thankfully. We're still not there, but obviously it's on the way there. So talk us through some of the movements that the Irish Menopause has been instrumental in.
Well, I don't know if you want to call us instrumental, but the way I see it, like 3.5 years ago, the group was born. As we say jokingly, we didn't have a doctor or a patch between us. And we're now in a space with the 44,000, and obviously there's a lot of HRT takers, that's up to themselves. The government have listened to the Department of Health. It's slow, it's baby steps, but we now have menopause clinics opened by the Department of Health. So, the Dublin one and the regional ones, they're specialist clinics for complex cases. So women who are complicated, their GP can't help, can be referred there. So that's the first time in the history of the state there's been a clinic with menopause over the door. And Deirdre Lundy had some up, and I know she's thrilled with them, because poor Deirdre has been in menopause land, as I call it, for many years, shouting from the rooftops. Nobody listened. She told me herself, you couldn't give HRT away after the WHI study. You couldn't give it away. Nobody listened. But now, you see, this happens in numbers. Nobody listens to individuals. When you've got a mass movement, which we have in Ireland, there's loads of people in menopause space, promoting menopause too. Promoting is the wrong word, but driving it. So, this is what women coming together in numbers, and it's happening. And the budget the other day, it's a small step, it's not great, but they've removed VAT on HRT products. Yet again, have those 3 letters HRT ever been used in the budget before? No.
No, they haven't, of course.
These are huge things.
Yeah.
And, it might not seem like much now, but they're huge. They're historic things, So they were probably wondering, actually, in the budget speech, what is HRT? Maybe.
Yes, that wasn't probably were. I'm sure they were.
maybe not. So, there's been a lot that's gone on. We've seen way more education. A lot of workplaces are taking menopause policies out. They're doing menopause workplaces. The Department of Health have done many talks on it. The big thing now that we need and we're waiting on is leaflets distributed nationally. Okay, because not everybody uses the internet. You need something coming through your door. As you know, we don't have any information at hand, like even in your GP waiting room on the wall or on the coffee table, there's loads of information about different illnesses and things, but there's nothing on menopause. That's really important, but we're getting there slowly. There's a lot of work being done, a lot of work. And there's other people as well in menopause space in Ireland that are shouting from the rooftops. And it doesn't really matter what the conversation is. If the word menopause is used, it's bringing it out there. It really is. Because we never used that word before. It was hidden.
We didn't. And how do you feel about the actual word? Because I know for me,
I hate it.
Me too. I hate it. I think it's enough.
I think it's dinosaur. It's antiquated. It's old. It comes from the Greek word, as you know. It needs to be changed to what? I don't know. There's different thinking on that. I do like the thinking of the new specialist referring to it as a hormone deficiency. Because let's face it, take the emotion. That's what it is. Let's take the emotion out of it. Same with thyroid. But I know you don't say I have a thyroid deficiency, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
So, because women, not all of them, think menopause is this natural stage of life and you come out the other side of it. And yes, it is natural, but the coming out the other side of it, it depends. Like Victorian times, there was no other side. It was end of life when you hit menopause. So it depends on your opinion. And we don't, come out the other side of menopause. We enter it and we're in it for the rest of our life. And some of us are okay without hormones and some aren't. But then there's the sneaky stuff, as you know, Sinead. You might feel okay, but you might be losing bone.
Yeah.
And if you're not educated, you're not going to know to go and have a DEXA scan to check on your bones. You're told when you're 75 that you're riddled with osteoporosis after you have a fall. It's too late then.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that needs doing, and it's not going to happen overnight. But I think the changes that have happened are fantastic. I really do.
Yeah, it's amazing. It is.
Do you not think? I think with leaps and bounds. It's
and I think because the Irish Menopause, you've been part of some of the things on RTE.
There was the Joe Duffy thing. I wrote my stinker of an email into Joe. Well, it wasn't a stinker, it was lengthy, into Joe Duffy, and that opened the floodgates on that. And as a result, then they commissioned the documentary. So, but I just don't understand this silence. I was really fed up, and I just said, all these women are in a really bad way. They're suffering. Some of them are suicidal. Some of them can't mind their kids. Some of them can't do their jobs. And why are we all walking around pretending all is okay? It's not okay. And that's why I wrote into Liveline. And they took it on, in fairness, and hats off to them. Yeah. And you know what happened? Every woman in the country. Oh my God, is this what's wrong with me? Yeah. And we're still getting contact from people, even a year and a bit on. Some people are still listening back to the podcast going, oh my God, this is what's wrong with me for the last 10 years. That's scary.
It is, because I think there is still people who still haven't seen that, or they have also been talked down by whoever's in their environment, whether that's family, friends, medical world, that they still, despite everything that has happened in the space of menopause, they still feel like, but it's not hormones. And they'll sit in front of me and I'll be speaking to them for a couple of minutes.
I meet those ladies,
Yeah.
and some feel okay, and I have women saying to me, "Oh, I heard the Joe, isn't it terrible? Those poor women." But they're the same. But it's like as if it's not happening them. It's happening
Yeah.
everybody else. But
Yeah.
the woman that might be saying that to me, and no disrespect, she might have arthritis and depression and etc. etc. She could, God love them, isn't terrible. So everybody is different. And if you're okay, you're okay. But please don't discount menopause and the ability and the power of hormones. There's serious biochemicals, and you know that, Sinead. Serious biochemicals.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I think without the education, we don't really understand that lack of hormones could give you sore feet, stiff neck and shoulders, tennis elbow, because we don't understand them.
Yeah, exactly. And then you see people, like I see people coming through me who are diagnosed with fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis. And I'm not saying that
Low
they don't have,
progesterone and nutrition, yeah.
but again, it just, nobody's thinking or looking at the holistically at everything. And it just, yeah, it is. I mean, the prevention is huge. And that's one
I
thing.
think so. And I think all of these things are a symptom, but what's the cause? You need to look at that. They're a symptom of something. If you've got a problem with your shoulder, it's a symptom of something. If you've got migraine, it's a symptom of something else. And it's, having the fun and digging down to what is the something else, a bit like in what you're doing in your space. Is it nutritional deficiency? Is it a histamine issue? Like, what is going on in the body?
Exactly.
Get to
And
the
like
roots of it.
you come across a lot of that, Sallyanne, with your one-to-one consults, obviously. So you do quite a lot of education. So some of the talks that you do offer to people, if you want to tell people a little bit about that, what kind of talks you?
Well, I do workplace talks, as you know, and I do online education classes as well, where I present menopause information from start to finish. And it's a really good starting point for people, because a lot of people, for example, come into our Facebook group and they just get overwhelmed. They just see all these posts. And we have to remember, with any online platform, it's like the news, you only hear bad things. So you might take, like, there was a woman I dealt with recently, and she said, I joined your group, but I left it after about a week because it was depressing me. And I just said, oh, wow, So it was interesting to get her viewpoint on it. But she did come back. But because she was in a bad space herself and not feeling good, she wasn't seeing any positivity.
Okay.
So it's important that we remember it's like an onion. Okay. You need to peel beneath those layers. And only people who are struggling are posting. When you're having a great day, it doesn't enter your head to go onto Facebook to tell everybody you're having a great day.
Yeah.
Okay, you'll go on though when you have a migraine or whatever. It's human nature. So it's important, but the information is there, and don't take everything as gospel. Everybody is different, and there's so much positivity. There's so many lives that have been got back. There's so many issues that have been unresolved for so long and now are, whether it's HRT, whether it's nutrition. I think we need to have a better understanding as humans, and hands up, I didn't know the depth of it years ago. We are what we eat. We really are.
We totally are. Yes, absolutely.
That expression, we all know, you are what you eat. We don't pay attention to it. I've read the studies, I've done the research. The microbiome gets shredded by perimenopause. The microbiome gets destroyed as well by COVID. And nothing works properly when your microbiome isn't right. Mental health issues, your gut health. And a perfect example of this, Sinead, is when I got COVID. I didn't get the typical chest and cough and all that. My gut was in bits, and the anxiety. I was off my head with anxiety because my gut wasn't right. The minute I resolved on that, the anxiety went away as well. And this is where the whole histamine thing links in as well. You're dealing with that, this is huge. There's more histamine now than not, from what I can see.
Yeah.
And I'd never even heard of it a few years ago.
And people didn't hear of it. And I think they didn't hear histamine. They didn't hear mast cell activation syndrome. They didn't hear of these things. Again, they're in a different sphere, I suppose. But again, these kind of things have exacerbated. And again, it is down to, yes, our diet, our nutrition, our lifestyle, what's happening. Think of the toxins we have around us all the time. There's those kind of things. And I think what people need to remember is, I know it can be very overwhelming for them when they know they need to make changes. It's about just starting to make those little changes.
Baby steps.
Yeah, baby steps. You don't have to do it all in one go. If it takes you years, but it's just about those baby steps, isn't it?
Yeah, and it took me time as well, I didn't fix myself overnight. I had the help of some really good doctors. On the histamine side, I didn't get any help.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, I tell a lie. I did get a bit of help at one point, but the rest of it I took on board and I made the changes myself and I got
Mm-hmm.
there. It's all of these things sound a bit mad when they don't affect you.
Yeah.
Um, Toxins and all of that. When they affect you, you know all about it. And the body just isn't able to break down stuff like it did as you age. And when you've got the compromise of the immune system with perimenopause, menopause, and your methylation, I think, just goes bananas and you run into trouble.
Yeah,
And this
definitely.
is what you deal with.
Yeah, and it's the education. It's about people understanding things, because then they can, I think, then you understand your own health. Not everybody's good at picking up things going on in their body. Some of us are a little bit more sensitive to that because of the way our bodies are. But yeah, I think it's about people understanding their body to watch out for certain triggers.
What do you deal with mostly, Sinead, or is it varied? Like, I know it's males and females, but is it all people coming to you with gut health? Like,
Well, a lot of
well,
women
obviously
do.
that's your thing,
Look,
but
the majority of the people that come to me, I don't think there's anybody that doesn't have to support their gut. There
oh, I
isn't
know
somebody
that. Yeah,
that
yeah.
doesn't have gut issues going on. So that's one of the big things that we'll always do, is work on the gut, because nothing else is going to balance or work properly if we haven't got the gut working properly, as you experience with your anxiety. And there is that the gut brain connection with the vagus nerve. So, like, even if you've got that anxiety, you're in a catch-22 because you're affecting your gut as well.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And
yeah.
are you coming across a lot of SIBO out of interest?
Yeah, I would come across a good
Mm.
bit of SIBO. And again, because I've worked in research with the microbiome and in UCC and CUH. So again, SIBO is something that again has gotten out there a lot more. A lot more people know about it. A lot more doctors are kind of talking and dealing about it again. And again, I think it's when we spoke before, we spoke about, again, sometimes people are getting things like that because they're eating foods that aren't right for them and that are causing this bacterial overgrowth, or supplements, so
We
it's
live
just,
in a very different world now, Sinead, too. Obviously, I wasn't around years ago, but highly processed foods,
oh yeah.
toxins, plastics, it's
Mm.
very different. And I do wonder as well the impact it's having on the endocrine system. Like, we can't go back in time, like, but is our menopause a lot worse nowadays than a couple of 100 years ago?
Possibly. Yeah,
Yeah, I would
possibly
think
is.
all the endocrine disruptors. And I
Yeah.
know some people watching this say these pair are mad, but we're not. We've lived this.
Yeah.
And your hormone health is everything. You really need to mind your
Yeah.
hormones.
You do.
Look,
And
conventional medicine don't believe in endocrine disruptors and all of that. That's the
no,
problem. You're kind
it's
of
a totally different world. It's not the way they train. And I think you have to also throw into the mix the viruses that we have around now. I mean, look at what kind of viruses are starting up again that we had eradicated, and had taken a long time to eradicate. So I think it's a little bit of I don't want to say it's a frightening time, but it is a time that's just very different. And it sometimes feels like, are we gone back a few hundred years,
yeah. Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
does,
you're
doesn't it?
right. I agree. It's the unknown, and COVID, as we know, very scary time for everybody. The aftermath of that, we don't even know what's ahead of us now in the winter, but it's
Mm.
pretty scary. And it's been very interesting from myself and Claire's viewpoint as well with the group. We have, from a distance, watched women who are thriving, with their HRT or
Mm.
without it, whatever, gone backwards after a dose of COVID,
Mm.
and long COVID. And it's very, very difficult. And I'd say you deal with a lot of that. And also men out there who are developing intolerances and stuff after a dose of COVID. And we don't know enough about this virus.
No, we don't, and
But
we're
it's
not going
obviously
to for a long
activating
time.
mast cells.
Yeah,
That's a
exactly.
problem.
Yeah, that is, and it's yeah, and I think that's where the importance of looking at all avenues. And I would always, and it's the way I would have been before I even studied naturopathic nutrition, is I would always try and find a natural way to try and solve something. If that doesn't work, then I look at Western medicine. Sometimes you still don't get the answer there, and there's something missing that you have to try and figure out where that root cause is. But it's about looking at all the avenues, and not just focusing on, because Western medicine, unfortunately, it's developed from ourselves in society, but we've looked for quick fixes, and that's what Western medicine has tried to give us. But it also can cause then other issues for our system.
Yeah,
So it
I
is
hear you.
world.
Yeah. It's interesting, and it shouldn't be one versus the other.
No,
You know,
Should be
They can be
complimentary.
friends. They can be friends. A little bit of
Yeah.
this, a little bit of that. We need to be open-minded, and whatever works for the individual.
I think so. Yeah, actually, one of the speakers that was at the weekend, she was amazing. But I think that one thing that stuck out with me was again her approach, was this interdisciplinary. It's an
Yeah,
interdisciplinary approach. It's not. It's a mix of us, of all of us. We're all in the sphere, and all we're trying to do is make life easier for other people and help people at the end of the day.
yeah,
But yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Sallyanne, for coming on.
Pleasure.
And
Thank
so
you.
again, do you just want to let people know again where they can find you?
Yeah, of course. The Irish Menopause, we're easily found. So you'll find us on Instagram and on Facebook and on Twitter. And as I say, if you're looking for support and all the information and the chit chat that comes with it, the Irish Menopause private support group. Thank you,
Perfect.
Sinead.
Thank you, Sallyanne.
All right.